Let's stop sugarcoating it. He had you, and he didn't value you. You were available, loyal, and emotionally invested, and he treated it like background noise. Not because you weren't enough, but because he assumed you'd always be there. That's what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness, effort for desperation, and your consistency for complacency. But here's the truth. People don't wake up when you say more. They wake up when you give less, when you finally stop calling. Stop chasing. Stop trying to make him see what he refused to look at. You don't need to beg someone to appreciate you. You just need to stop giving to the person who took you for granted and give them nothing instead, because silence. That's where the lesson begins. Ready to break it down? Let's get into it. When you consistently show up for someone, especially in a romantic relationship, it's natural to expect that the other person will value that. You're there for them when they need you. You check in. You support their highs, hold space for their lows, and you do it all without asking for much in return, because when you care, you give freely. But here's where the danger lies. When your consistency goes unappreciated long enough, it becomes invisible. What once made you special becomes expected. What once made them feel lucky starts to feel routine. And suddenly, you're no longer cherished. You're just there. He got comfortable with your effort, your presence, your energy. Comfortable enough to stop matching it. Maybe he started replying later. Maybe he became less curious about how you felt. Maybe you noticed he only reached out when he needed something or when he was bored. The shift didn't happen overnight, but little by little, he started to act like your love was guaranteed, not earned. And why wouldn't he? You were consistent. You didn't walk away when he forgot to text back. You understood when he cancelled. You gave him the benefit of the doubt, again and again. You kept showing up, hoping he'd notice, hoping he'd meet you with the same effort. But the more you gave without boundaries, the more he assumed it was endless. He stopped asking himself, what would it feel like to lose her? Because he never thought he would. This isn't to say your consistency was a mistake. Being steady, loyal, and emotionally available are beautiful qualities. But even the best qualities can be taken advantage of when they're given to someone who doesn't know how to appreciate them. Love without boundaries often teaches others that they don't have to earn your presence, they just have to avoid pushing you away completely. What he failed to realize was that your consistency wasn't weakness, it was love, it was commitment. And it was a choice. He assumed it was permanent, like you'd always be there no matter how little he gave in return. But even the most giving person has a limit. Eventually, you wake up. You realize that being taken for granted is worse than being rejected because it erodes your self-worth from the inside out. That's when the shift has to happen, not in him, but in you. You stop giving on autopilot. You pause. You take stock of what you're receiving in return, and if it doesn't align with the energy you're putting out, you pull back. Not to punish, but to reset, because people don't change when they're comfortable. They change when the comfort is removed, when the effort they were used to suddenly disappears, when they no longer have the emotional safety net they didn't appreciate. He got comfortable because you were consistent, but now your consistency has to turn inward. You redirect that loyalty, that emotional presence, that steady love toward yourself. And in doing that, you send a message that's louder than any confrontation or long speech. You no longer get access to me just because you're used to having me. That's when things start to shift. Sometimes it wakes him up, sometimes it doesn't. But either way, you win because you're no longer showing up where you're not seen. You're no longer proving yourself to someone who stopped paying attention. You're no longer feeding someone who didn't think they could go hungry. He got comfortable, but comfort isn't the same as care. And when you finally recognize that, you stop giving out love like it's limitless. Because it's not. It's a privilege, and not everyone deserves to keep receiving it. There's a point in every one-sided relationship where your words start to lose their power. You've explained how you feel, you've asked for more, you've said you're tired, that you feel unappreciated, that the dynamic feels off. And yet, nothing really changes. You start to realize that talking doesn't change anything with someone who doesn't think they're doing anything wrong. That's where your silence becomes the only language left, your absence, the only message they might actually hear. People often believe that if they can just find the right way to phrase something, the other person will suddenly understand, care, and show up differently. But some lessons can't be taught with words. They're only felt when something that was once consistent, like your love, your energy, your presence, is suddenly gone. It's in the silence that people are forced to feel the consequences of their own behavior. If he took you for granted, chances are he never truly imagined what life would be like without your support. He didn't fear losing you because, deep down, he didn't believe you'd ever really leave. Maybe you've threatened too. Maybe you've pulled back before, only to return because of guilt or hope. But when you truly give him nothing, humility, no emotional updates, no pieces of yourself, it forces him into a confrontation with reality. He has to sit with the silence he created. Your absence becomes the mirror he never wanted to look into. It's not your words that hit him, it's the shift, the contrast. He used to take comfort in the idea that no matter how he acted, you were still there. So when that version of you vanishes, it shakes the very foundation he stood on. He's no longer met with comfort. He's met with space, and in that space, he has to ask himself questions he was never brave enough to face before. Did I push her away? Was I too careless? Why did she stop trying? That silence does more than just spark curiosity. It triggers accountability. It forces him to take ownership of how he showed up, because now there's no one left trying to smooth over the rough edges. And if there was real care there, real connection beneath the surface, that absence will sting, that quiet will echo. He'll feel the weight of what he lost, not because you made him feel bad, but because you stopped protecting him from the consequences of his actions. The power of silence is that it removes you from the role of emotional caretaker. You're no longer trying to explain how hurt you are. You're simply not there to be hurt anymore. That shift in energy is far more impactful than any speech. It's not aggressive, it's not cold, it's clear. And in its clarity, it teaches a lesson that words couldn't. I will not stay where I am not valued. And yes, it will hurt. For you, too, because going silent isn't easy when you care. It can feel like giving up, but it's not giving up. It's stepping back. It's letting the silence speak because your voice has been ignored too many times. It's trusting that if someone really values you, they'll feel your absence more than they ever listened to your presence. And if they don't, that silence saved you from investing even more into a place that couldn't give you what you deserve. So give him nothing, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Let the silence do the talking now. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is absolutely nothing at all. You don't owe loyalty to someone who made a habit of disregarding your feelings. That's the trap so many people fall into, believing that staying loyal, staying patient, staying available will eventually be rewarded. But when someone consistently makes you feel small, unseen, or like an afterthought, you have to ask yourself a deeper question. Is this loyalty, or is this self-abandonment in disguise? Loyalty is a beautiful thing when it's mutual, when it's being reciprocated with care, respect, and presence. But when loyalty is given to someone who gives you inconsistency, neglect, or disrespect in return, it's no longer a strength. It becomes a form of quiet self-destruction. Because you're not just standing by them anymore. You're standing in the way of your own healing, your own peace, your own growth. The person who took you for granted got used to the idea that you'd stay no matter what. You were the safety net. The fallback, the one who would be there even when they dropped the ball over and over. And maybe they never said it directly, but their actions told the story. I don't have to show up fully because she'll always be here. That's not love. That's convenience. And the hard truth is, loyalty to someone who treats you as an option teaches them that their behavior is acceptable. Every time you overlook the red flag, every time you excuse the missed call, every time you take the blame just to keep the peace, you reinforce the dynamic that says, I'll tolerate less than I deserve just to hold on to you. But there comes a point when your loyalty becomes the very thing keeping you stuck. You start losing touch with your own needs. You stop asking for more because you're afraid they'll walk away. You convince yourself that being loyal means enduring emotional neglect, but it doesn't. Loyalty is not about endurance. It's about alignment. And if someone's words and actions don't align with the way you deserve to be treated, the most loyal thing you can do is walk away from them and walk back toward yourself. When you choose to give him nothing, when you finally pull back that energy, that access, that care, what you're really doing is reclaiming your power. You're drawing a line that says, I am done staying where I'm not respected. You stop defending someone who wouldn't defend your heart. You stop waiting for someone to change while you slowly shrink into someone you don't recognize. And yes, it might feel cold at first, especially if you're someone who's always been the giver, the forgiver, the one who holds the emotional weight of the relationship. But cutting the cord isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's recognizing that you can love someone deeply and still know they're not healthy for you. It's understanding that being loyal to them is costing you loyalty to yourself. This is where your transformation begins. When you stop choosing someone who has already chosen their comfort over your feelings, when you stop explaining why you're hurt and start acting on it, when you no longer offer loyalty to someone who never offered you safety, that's when you start living from a place of self-respect. So give him nothing, not because you're bitter, but because you're done being loyal to a version of him that doesn't exist. You don't owe someone your loyalty just because you love them. You owe yourself the kind of love that doesn't require you to constantly prove it's enough. Pulling away doesn't make you petty, it makes you powerful. There's this fear, especially when you're someone who loves deeply, that if you stop giving, you're being cold. That if you stop reaching out, you're playing games. But there's a difference between manipulation and self-protection. And knowing when to stop pouring energy into someone who doesn't value it isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. You've given, you've been available, you've shown up emotionally, physically, and maybe even beyond what was fair. And what did it get you? Moments of attention, maybe. Occasional crumbs of affection. Just enough to keep you hanging on, but never enough to feel fully seen or secure. That emotional imbalance wears on you. It leaves you second, guessing your worth, questioning if you're too much or not enough. And slowly, without realizing it, you start working harder to earn something that was never being reciprocated in the first place. Pulling away is what disrupts that cycle. It's the moment you stop trying to prove your value and instead start reclaiming your power. It doesn't mean slamming doors or making dramatic exits. It means quietly choosing yourself. It means realizing that you've already said enough, done enough, hoped enough. And now it's time to let your absence speak louder than your efforts ever could. There's a reason why withholding your energy is so effective. Energy is attention, time, emotional investment. When you keep giving it freely, even to someone who doesn't earn it, you're reinforcing the idea that your presence is guaranteed. That no matter how little they give, you'll keep showing up. But when you pull away, really pull away without warnings or performances, it forces a shift in dynamic. Suddenly they feel what life is like without your emotional investment propping them up. That space, that silence, that's where realization lives, not always immediately, and not always with the outcome you might want. But it creates a moment of discomfort that they can't ignore. And that discomfort is necessary. Because as long as you keep cushioning the impact of their neglect, they'll never feel the weight of it. As long as you keep giving, they'll never realize how much they've taken. And often, the only thing that wakes someone up is the sudden absence of what they once assumed would always be there. Withholding your energy isn't about playing hard to get. It's about protecting your peace. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to make a statement. You just stop giving. You redirect that love, attention, and effort back to where it always should have been, toward yourself. You focus on the parts of your life that make you feel strong, full, and grounded, and in doing that, you remind yourself that your value was never determined by how someone else responded to it. You start to see clearly the right person won't need convincing, the right person won't need to feel your absence to recognize your presence. But the wrong person, sometimes that's the only way they learn, and sometimes it's the only way you finally let them go. This isn't about revenge. It's not about hoping they suffer without you. It's about choosing not to suffer with them anymore. It's about no longer offering your energy to someone who mishandled it. Because the moment you decide that your love, your time, your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee, is the moment you begin living like the you person you truly are. Pulling away isn't petty. It's the clearest declaration that you will no longer invest in anything that doesn't invest back. Every text you send, every call you make, every moment you spend thinking about him is an emotional investment. And like any investment, you want to see a return, a sign that what you're putting in is valued, appreciated, and reciprocated. But what happens when you keep spending this currency on someone who doesn't spend the same on you? When you pour your attention and energy into someone who treats it like it's unlimited, like it's just there to be taken for granted. Attention is powerful. It's not just about communication, it's about presence, focus, and intention. When you give someone your attention, you're telling them they matter to you. You're signaling that they deserve your time and emotional availability. But when that attention isn't matched, it becomes exhausting. It's like throwing coins into a well that never fills up. Over time, the imbalance drains you emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically. Think about it. If you keep prioritizing someone who doesn't prioritize you, you're effectively bankrupting yourself. You're spending your emotional currency in a way that leaves you empty, hoping that someday, somehow, they'll notice and give you back what you deserve. But the truth is, no one else's actions can make you feel worthy. Your sense of worth has to come from inside, from how you choose to spend your time and energy. When he took you for granted, he didn't just ignore your needs. He ignored your boundaries, and boundaries are the guardrails of self-respect. If you don't set limits on how much attention and care you give, you allow others to decide your value for you. They get to determine how much you're worth based on how much you're willing to give without receiving in return. That's not only unfair, it's unsustainable. Closing the emotional bank account isn't about being cruel or indifferent. It's about protecting your resources and making sure you're investing them wisely. It's about realizing that your time and love are precious and deserve to be valued, not spent on someone who treats them like a given. When you stop chasing after attention that isn't freely given, you reclaim your power. This doesn't mean you become cold or unfeeling. It means you become discerning. You start paying attention to who deserves your energy, who respects your boundaries, and who shows up consistently in your life. You begin to understand that the right people will meet you halfway, or even come all the way to meet you, without you having to beg or prove your worth. By withholding your attention from someone who took you for granted, you're sending a message louder than words. I am no longer available for less than I deserve. You're demonstrating that your presence is conditional on respect and appreciation, not on past loyalty or hopes for change. Sometimes when you stop spending your emotional currency on someone, they'll finally see what they lost. But even if they don't, you've won by protecting your energy and refusing to be emotionally bankrupt. Because at the end of the day, your emotional well-being is your most valuable asset, and how you choose to spend it shapes the quality of your life. So don't keep investing in someone who treats your love like a free resource. Stop feeding the habit of being taken for granted. Guard your attention fiercely. It's the highest form of self-love you can practice and the clearest way to tell the world you know your worth. Sometimes the most powerful boundary you can set isn't a conversation, a confrontation, or a lengthy explanation. It's the simple act of giving nothing at all. No calls, no texts, no check-ins, no attempts to explain yourself or justify your feelings. Just silence, and that silence speaks louder than any words ever could. When someone takes you for granted, it's often because they never faced real consequences for their actions. They got used to your presence, your availability, your emotional labor being on stand by whenever they needed it. They never had to worry that you might walk away because you didn't. They never had to feel the uncertainty of what life would be like without you in it. So they didn't change, they didn't grow, they didn't appreciate you. But when you stop responding, stop showing up, stop giving, they finally have to face the reality they avoided. That absence creates a void, a space that forces them to reckon with what they lost by not valuing you. And because that silence isn't filled with anger, blame, or accusations, it becomes undeniable. It's not about making them feel guilty. It's about making them understand that your presence was a gift, not a guarantee. Giving nothing is not about revenge, it's about respect. Respect for yourself and your emotional boundaries. It's about saying, without saying, I deserve better. It's about stepping back from the emotional exhaustion of trying to prove your worth to someone who never truly saw it in the first place. This kind of boundary is radical because it removes you from the cycle of chasing and pleading. It stops the emotional roller coaster of highs and lows, hope and disappointment. It allows you to reclaim your energy, your peace, and your power. And often that space creates clarity, not just for him, but for you as well. In that quiet, you start to reconnect with your own needs, your own desires, and your own worth outside of his approval or attention. You remind yourself that you don't have to justify your feelings or explain your boundaries to anyone who refuses to respect them. You realize that sometimes the strongest love you can show is the love you give yourself by walking away from what no longer serves you. It's not easy. Giving nothing can feel like giving up, but it's the exact opposite. It's a deliberate choice to protect your heart from further hurt. It's the ultimate act of self-care in a situation where you've been emotionally depleted. And it's the message that you will no longer be an option, a fallback, or a safety net for someone who never made you a priority. When you give nothing, you also give him the chance to reflect. Sometimes that silence will prompt him to act, to change, to fight for you in a way he never did before. Other times, it will confirm what you already suspected, that he wasn't willing or able to meet you where you deserved to be met. Either way, giving nothing is a boundary that honors your worth. It's a lesson in self-respect that no words could ever teach. It's an invitation to yourself to step into the kind of love and respect you truly deserve, whether he comes back or not. So, if he took you for granted, don't waste your energy trying to convince him otherwise. Give him nothing instead. Let your silence be the lesson that changes everything. At the end of the day, realizing that someone took you for granted is painful, but it's also your wake-up call. It's the moment you decide You won't keep giving your love and energy to someone who never truly valued them. By choosing to give him nothing, you're not being cruel, you're reclaiming your power, your worth, and your peace. This isn't about punishment, it's about protection, protection of your heart, your time, and your future. Remember, the strongest love you can show is the love you give yourself. When you stop chasing someone who took you for granted, you open the door for real respect, real connection, and a love that matches your worth. So stand firm, stay true to yourself, and never settle for less than you deserve. Because you are worthy of being chosen, cherished, and celebrated always.